Hello and welcome to Marineford TCG. Today I'm going to be going over the starter decks, the new starter decks from ST15 through to 20. We have one of each colour, they're all mono colour leaders, which is pretty cool. And there's also a special sealed event going on for these decks that you'll have at your local game store. So today we've got a few things to go over. First, I'm going to be going over the event, the sealed event. We're going to talk about how that works. We're going to talk about some general tips for the event, some things that might differ a little from standard constructed play. Then we're going to hop over to the sim, where I've got each of the decks built as you would pick them out of the box. And we're going to have a look at a build for each of the decks, look what comes in the box, see if any of the cards stand out as really strong or really weak. Then I've got a ranking for all of these leaders for the decks themselves, whether you should consider picking them up for sealed to try and win the event, or for constructed to help you in the constructed format in the future. So without any further ado, the leaders in these starter decks are red Edward Newgate, green Uta, blue Doflamingo, purple Luffy, black Smoker and yellow Katakuri, as you can see here. So when you turn up to your event, it might differ from store to store. I would recommend checking with your gaming store. How the event works generally is you're going to buy one of the 6 decks, you're going to open that deck, and then you're going to battle against other people who have bought one of the other decks. It's not a constructed deck, you don't need to own any cards before coming to this event. This is a really nice event if you're considering getting into the game, if you're a new player for example. This is a really cool time to get into the game. There's a whole bunch of new cards coming out, and this will be a really friendly environment to meet new people and have fun with One Piece. So for participating in this event, you're going to get one of these 6 playmats. I presume most stores will give you one that matches the deck you've bought, but I imagine suppliers, it will be while suppliers last. So if everybody buys Doflamingo, for example, they might run out of Doflamingo playmats. But either way, these playmats are really cool. They give you a nice idea of how the game works, how the game areas on the board work, which is pretty cool. They also have the art that's on the leader cards. The ones I have in this are just the ones I use on the sim, because it was easier to copy over, and they're my favourite ones. But these are actually the arts of the leaders, so you can see here like the Doflamingo, the Newgate, the Uta. These are the arts of the leaders you're going to get on your leader card. For today's participating, you're also going to get one random promo. You might not get the one that goes with your deck, unfortunately, but these are the 6 you're going to get. There's the Whitebeard Pirates Searcher event, there's the 2K Film Chopper, which this is actually the artwork from one of the old regional promos, I believe, which is pretty cool. There's 5-cost Shirahoshi for some reason. I don't know why they chose this for the Katakuri representation, seeing as she is not a Big Mom pirate, but it's a good card. You have the 4-cost 2K Croc, the 6-cost Roronoa Zoro, from the pre-release event from set 6, I believe, and you have the starter deck 6 Tashigi. In terms of these, I'd say the best one is probably the Roronoa Zoro, just because this card's a little bit harder to get your hands on as it's only been a pre-release promo in the past. The Crocodile is also very playable in the Doflamingo deck in Constructed, so that will be a nice one to pull. The Tashigi is a decent one. The Shirahoshi is okay in yellow decks. This Chopper we'll see play in Uta, but not much else ever, and Whitebeard Pirates doesn't tend to see a lot of play anymore, as we have the Ito Searcher. And all of these come with a little stamp you can see here below the sample text. It says release event. These are non-foil versions, but if you win, you'll get a random pack with one of these as a foil version. I imagine the foil versions of, for example, the Crocodile might go for quite a bit of money, so that's pretty cool. You also get one of these storage boxes if you win, which is interesting. It's the first time I've seen Bandai do anything like this, but hey, I'm here for it. Next up, I've got some general notes on the battles themselves. So all of these decks have lower than standard 2k counts, so it might be more valuable swinging 6s, or 7s into Whitebeard of course, as he's a 6000 power leader. So that's something to consider. It obviously depends what you're going for. If you're going for cards out of hand, 5s are still very, very good, but if you're specifically looking to deal damage and you think your opponent doesn't have many 2Ks, it's worth noting they don't have many in their deck, so you could probably count the ones in trash and make an educated guess on how many there are left. Some of the 2-off power cards are really strong in these decks, but they're inconsistent to draw. I'll show you them all later, but some that stand out to me are ST17 Bo Hancock, which is the blocker in Doflamingo, and ST18 Luffy Taro, which is the 7 cost that cheats out 5 cost in the purple Luffy deck. Very little removal. You play constructed, everything's getting removed, especially by decks like Lucci and Black Luffy, but in this format there are not many removal cards. Smoker has probably the best removal in the Toshigi and the Kobe card that we'll cover. He has 6 total. Uta has 4, that's the backlight event. Katakuri has 4, but it is Thunderbolt. If he gets it off a trigger, great, brilliant. If he doesn't get it off a trigger, that's costing him a life. That's a pretty bad card if it's not being a trigger. Whitebeard has 2, which are the 7 cost Edward Newgate, but these are reusable of course, seeing as it isn't activate main. This is one of the strongest removal in the format, however, it is only a 2-off, you've got to find it. And this can also then be removed by Smoker. Doflamingo has 2 good ones, but he also has these are the 4-cost blocker law that bounces a 4. He also has the Jinbei that KOs 3 on KO and Overheat that bounces an active 3 as a counter event, but these your opponent can obviously play around by either not KOing Jinbei or attacking with their 3 cost first. Also, removing a 3 is not amazing. Luffy has the Orobi, which KOs a 3 on play, which is slightly better. You can remove things like chump blockers and even the 3 cost vanillas. Because there's so little removal, this makes normally bad when attacking effects, like the Atmos that stops your Newgate from taking a life, and the Daifuku, which effectively reads draw a card when attacking, with slightly extra steps. It makes them more useful. They're not necessarily insane, but I think Atmos especially is quite compelling. This also makes already good when attacking effects like the Sangoro that draws a card, and the ST03 Mihawk that says draw 2, trash 2. Makes them even better. Although I will note with the Mihawk, because there's so few 2Ks, and this is one of your 2K, you usually won't want to play him down on the field. Moving on, some interesting facts. All the decks except Uta and Luffy contain 4 3-cost vanillas and 4 4-cost vanillas. I will say generally, I think Bandai has done a pretty good job, with one notable exception, of balancing these decks. I think most of these decks have a searcher, have a decent amount of 2Ks, don't have too many bricks, and have a good amount of blockers at least, as well as some vanillas to have some guaranteed early game plays. All the decks contain 4 searchers, though they are not equal. We'll go through them when we go through the decks. I will say I think the Newgate possibly has the best searcher, whilst the Doflamingo almost certainly has the worst. Bricks. Most of these decks don't have too many bricks. Luffy has 12 bricks, which is quite high, but he does have 10 2Ks to make up for it. Smoker also has slightly more bricks, but slightly higher 2Ks than some of the other decks. Uta, here's the long and short of it. This deck stinks. This Uta deck, specifically for the sealed event, is horrible. I don't know what they were thinking. If this was just a product that came out, basically this has a whole bunch of reprint events from the previous Uta Sealed Battle event. Most of them are bad, but a couple of them are decent. If this was just a product that came out, it would be whatever, but the fact that they intend people to play with this in a sealed battle is mind-boggling. Whoever at Bandai made this decision is insane. So you have 28 bricks, most of which are events. This is not including counter events, by the way. Some of these decks have a couple counter events, notably the Katakuri and the Doflamingo have counter events. Uta also has a counter event, but it's pretty bad. One thing to note on this is there is a Gordon blocker. He's a 2-cost 0-power blocker that says when your opponent attacks, you can trash any number of music cards, which are the events, from your hand, and they each give 1k counter. So they're not strictly bricks, but if you don't have Gordon on the board, or if Gordon gets removed, or if you have to block with Gordon, then they are bricks. So it's just bad overall. 2Ks, most of these decks have a decent amount of 2Ks. Doffy and Whitebeard have slightly less. Whitebeard, it kind of makes sense. He's a 6k leader. He shouldn't need as many 2Ks anyway. Doffy's 2Ks are good. They're both good, but yeah, I think nerfing him a little bit it is fine. He's going to have a big board anyway, so he's going to defend his life less, I expect. Smoker and Katakuri have 8, Luffy has 10, which again is kind of nice because he has 12 bricks, and he also takes his own life. And Uta has 2 2Ks, which is just tragic. Again, they really did Uta dirty in this set of starter decks. Blockers. All these decks have a good amount of blockers. All of them have some low-cost blockers, and they all have some additional blockers. Whitebeard has 12 blockers, which is pretty crazy. Uta has 6, which is good. These 3 all have 8, and then Katakuri has 6. We'll go over the blockers when we look through the decks. So that's a nice brief overview of these. Then now let's hop over to the sim, and we'll take a look at the builds as they come out of the box. So first up, we have the Whitebeard deck. So Whitebeard is a 6,000 power leader with 6 life, which is crazy. I think this will be especially powerful in a sealed format, because opponents just having to donate Don to their characters and their leader to attack into you at all, I think will be very powerful. You also end up with a lot of resources in your hand. I think it is a shame they didn't give Whitebeard any counter events. Typically in Constructed he plays with a whole bunch of counter events. I understand there's Straw Hat, mostly, and they wanted to keep this to Whitebeard cards. I think it would have been nice if they even just gave him a couple 0 costs, or things like Guard Point and Radical Beam would have been really cool. Also, Radical Beam has a little bit of price to it, so a reprint of that would have been pretty good. Either way, let's get into it. We have 4 Jozu, he's a 2k, and he can have Rush. Rush is there's not a lot of Rush in this format, so this is actually pretty decent. A 5-cost 5k Rusher is not the greatest, but it's okay, you know? And it's a 2k, of course, and it's Whitebeard searchable. You're going to have 4 of this Marco blocker. This guy is probably one of the best cards in the deck. On KO, you can trash a card from your hand with Whitebeard Pirates in its type, which is every card in the deck, I believe. And then he comes back from the trash as rested. So it doesn't matter if your opponent swings 6k, or if your opponent swings 10,000k. This guy can block the hit, and then come back from the trash for just 1 card, which is crazy. This is really going to help you in the end game when your Edward Newgate is down to 0 life, because we don't have the counter events that we need to defend his life efficiently. You have 4 of this Rakuyo. I'd never seen this card before, but it's actually not too bad. You put a Don on him, and all of your characters with Whitebeard Pirates, which is all of your characters, gain 1,000 power. This is like the Zoro leader effect on a character, which is actually pretty cool. You have 4 of this Ezo. It's a Searcher, top 5 for Whitebeard Pirates. This is great. This is probably the best Searcher in the format of any of the decks. Yeah. 4 Vanilla Speed Jill. She's a 4/6, or he's a 4/6. I'm not sure. 4 Vanilla Namuel. He's a 3/5. 4 2/3 Haruta. And this is similar to the Nami from the original starter deck. As activate main, give a rested Don to one of your leaders or characters, which is cool. This is nice. You'll get a lot of value in this event with a card like this, purely because of the lack of removal. Fossa, you got 4 of them. He's a 2/2 blocker. He has counter, which is nice. Atmos is the first of the new cards. He's a 4-cost 5k with 1k counter. And he says, when attacking, if your leader is Edward Newgate, you cannot add life cards to your hand using your own effects during this turn, which is really nice. It shuts off mostly the leader effect, so when you attack with Atmos, you don't lose a life at the end of your turn, which is really good, because this deck's biggest problem is going to be just running out of life. We have 2 of this Edward Newgate. This is the best card in the deck for Constructed, easily. It's probably one of the best cards in this sealed format as well. He's a 7-cost 8k, no counter, and on play you give your leader or one of your characters 1 rested Don, which is really nice. So he's effectively a 6/8 on the turn you play him. And then activate main, you can rest him, so you can do this on the turn you play him as well. And then you KO one of your opponent's characters with 5,000 or less power. This is really good. There's a lot of characters in this format with 5,000 or less power, and you can even play this Thatch to reduce their power by a little bit. So you could hit a 6,000 or 7,000 power character. And even if there's nothing you particularly want to KO, or nothing you can KO, you can just swing him for 8. This guy's got really good stats. This is a great card. We have 4 of this Kingdu. He's a 3-cost 4,000 power character. He has 1,000 counter and is a blocker. And he says, opponent's turn, when this character is KO'd by an effect, up to one of your leaders gains 2,000 power during this turn. So if they choose to KO him with an effect, like the Kobe, for example, or any of the cards that KO a 3-cost, your leader is now 8,000 power. So he's impossible, but borderline impossible to attack into. Obviously this doesn't go off when you block with Kingdu, but this basically means it's a guaranteed block, because if your opponent removes it, they're 2,000 power down on attacking your leader. 2 copies of Thatch. This is a nice 2k, 1 cost, 2,000 power. On play, if your leader has Whitebeard pirates in its types, give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 2,000 power for the turn. Then you take a life. Taking a life is pretty rough. If you've attacked with Atmos, it's not so bad, because then you don't do that. But 2,000 power down is really nice to combo with a Nugate in a clutch situation, and just being a 2k is pretty good. We've got 2 of this Ace. This is the last new card in this deck. He's a 5-cost 6,000 power unit with 1,000 counter. If your leader has Whitebeard pirates, including its types, this character gains Rush, which we do, so this is a Rush. This is probably the best Rush in the format. 5/6 is pretty strong. And then once per turn, if this character be removed from play by one of your opponent's effects, instead you may give it minus 2,000 power. This does obviously let your opponent then attack into this character, but then it's effectively blocked a hit as well, as withstood the KO, or the removal in general. And yeah, if your opponent has to swing first, for whatever reason, then obviously this just lives. You can even choose to counter with cards to save this after giving it minus 2,000 power. But yeah, this card's brilliant in Constructed as well. This is really nice in Marco. This is probably quite good in the Ace leader as well as Whitebeard. Just being a sticky body that's hard for black to remove. The main KO effects that are going to remove this is things like Thunderbolt and the Toshigi in Smoker. But being effectively immune, quote unquote, to those is pretty cool. And then the final card is 4 copies of You May Be a Fool, But I Still Love You. This is an event, 1-cost event. If you have 3 or less life, you cannot add life cards to your hand using your own effects during this turn. This is fine. Yeah, this can stem the bleeding a little bit in the late game, if you just play this out for 1. This might be quite important in the sealed battle. In standard this sees no play. But yeah, that's the Whitebeard. I'd say this deck's pretty good for Constructed. No, I mean for sealed. I think this deck's pretty good for sealed. You've got a nice spread of aggro options with the Vanillas, the Ace, and also some defensive choices like the Marco Blocker, the Nugate, and I'm a big fan of this Atmos actually for sealed. I'm tempted to try and draft this as my sealed option, just to see how it goes, because I think this could genuinely be a sleeper pick. Next up, we have Uta. This deck's rancid. This is horrible. Do not pick this. If you have a choice of which deck you play, do not pick this under any circumstances. We will go over the new cards, but yeah, this deck has 28 events. You don't have any characters to play. Let's go over the new cards anyway, for Constructed. You've got 2 copies of this new blocker Uta. It's a 4/6 blocker film, which is really nice. And it has Activate Main. You can trash a film type card from your hand and then give a leader or character Arrested Don. This is actually pretty good. On those turns, if you've played Uta, you'll understand you have turns where you have to play on curve. Such as your 7 Don turn, you want to play the 7-cost Luffy into something else, This lets you trash a card to effectively draw a card with leader. So this is an extra 1k swing and a trash 1, draw 1, in effect, on those turns where you need to play on curve, which is really cool. This also lets you play 8-cost Kid on curve and still give him a Don, which is nice. You have this 2-cost blocker Gordon with 0 power. He says, when opponent attacks, you can trash any number of music type cards from your hand. Your leader or character gains 1,000 power during this battle for every card trashed. But this trashes events to turn them into 1k counters. I think you're better off just with the 2-2 vanilla Blue No blocker, which is from EBO1, purely because this can be KO'd by Nico Robin. So this is an option, don't get me wrong, but your events in the actual constructed build of Uta, you tend to want to keep them. They tend to be pretty good. It's these 4 events here, Fleeting Lullaby, Where the Wind Blows, The World's Continuation, and Tot Musica, that absolutely stink. These other 3 are pretty good. This is a free searcher. This KOs or rests a 5. And then this restands your leader, which is really good. Next up, we've got this 3-cost Katakuri with 4000 power. Film Big Mom Pirates, 1k counter. If your leader has the film type and you have 6 or more rested cards, this includes Don, this character gains 2000 power. This is okay. I think for sealed, this will be one of your better cards, purely because the rest suck. But for constructed, I think you're probably still better off with the 3-5 vanilla film Usopp, just because you don't have to meet this weird condition. But I could be wrong, this could be better than the vanilla Usopp. This is the real star of the show. This is the 9-cost 11,000 power Shanks. He is film, Red Hair Pirates, and 4 Emperors. On play, you KO any rested character that your opponent controls. This is crazy. So in the 09 format, what we're seeing this a lot in Bonnie, and there's a lot of rush in the 09 format with things like the new 10-cost Shanks, like 8-cost Dragon, and this just comes in and kills it. So normally the 10-cost Shanks that debuffs all your opponent's characters is really strong into green decks, but if you can drop this and just remove it immediately and super efficiently, yeah, it's really good. This is easily the card you're picking up this deck for if you're picking up this deck. I'm probably going to buy 1 copy of this deck just to get a couple Shanks, and then I might buy a 3rd Shanks as a single. Last up for the new cards, we have this Luffy. He's a 2k, he says film, which is really nice for the Uta deck in Constructed. You're not playing this card out. I mean, you might be because you have no other characters in the deck, but he says if your Uta is rested, this character has 1,000 power extra, which is fine, but yeah, this is a decent card because it's a 2k film. This removes some bricks from your constructed Uta deck. But yeah, this is terrible. Don't pick this deck if you have a choice at all. Anything else is better. Next up, we've got Doflamingo. So this is going to be the most popular deck, I anticipate, for people picking one up to play in the event. If not because they think it's the strongest deck, although it is one of the strongest, certainly, just for its ramifications in Constructed. So his leader effect is Don times 2 when attacking. You tap 1, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a 7 Warlords of the Sea type character with a cost of 4 or less, you can play it in rested. This is great. 3 Don turn, you swing for 7 and play out the top card of your deck. In this build that they're giving you, the only whiffs are overheats, because it's not a character. Everything else is a hit. Whilst a lot of them, I will say, are not good hits, they're hits nonetheless. You get a body on the board, which in a format like this, seems very strong. Starting from the top, we've got 4 of the 3-cost Doffy blocker. On play, you look at the top 5 of your deck, and you stack them either at the top or the bottom in any order. This is great. This sets up your leader effect to hit a good target, whilst also fixing your draws for the next couple turns. This is one of the best cards in the deck. You really want to see this early if you're playing this in the sealed format. I would strongly recommend potentially even mulliganing for this. But yeah, this is also a nice reprint because in set 1, that's when this came out, and it's not had a reprint for a while, so it's got a little bit of value. We have 4 of the 4/6 Gecko Moria Vanilla. This is probably one of your best hits off the leader effect, because your opponent can't just swing into it for 5 with any of the leaders that aren't Edward Newgates, which is obviously very strong. And it's a 6k, which when attacking into a 5k leader demands a 2k, which we already went over. There's not that many 2ks. But yeah, this is stronger in the Doflamingo deck than I think any of the 4/6 vanillas are in any of the other decks, just because you can cheat it out for just 1 Don. This is Doflamingo's quote-unquote searcher, you look at the top two, you take a Warlords type card, which is any card in this deck, and then you put the remaining card back on the top or bottom of your deck. This is fine. It's a 3-cost 3k. It's not great. It can set up your leader effect, sort of, but yeah, this card kind of sucks. I'd be happy to use this as a 1k counter in most situations. A 3k body is not great on the board. If you trigger this out with your leader effect just randomly, it's okay, you can draw a card, I guess, but yeah, this isn't great. For this promo Jinbei, this is actually a really nice reprint, not because the card sees a ton of value, but because when this sees a ton of play, but because when this card did see some play, this was really expensive because it was only a promo. So what he does, he's a 4/5 1k counter. On KO, you bottom deck a 3-cost or lower, which in this format it's actually pretty good. You get to bot deck potentially a chump blocker, you get to bot deck a 3-cost vanilla, or any other effects. This is not bad. This is not one of your best targets for your leader effect, but being a 4/5 stat line at base is pretty good. We've got 4 of this 3/5 Weevil vanilla. This is okay. It's nice when you cheat it out for 1. But yeah, this artwork's horrendous, by the way. This is a classic early game One Piece anime screen cap with massive white box for no reason, which is quite funny. We have 4 of this Gecko Moria. You won't be getting this art Gecko Moria. You'll actually be getting a rancid looking Gecko Moria that's similar to this Weevil. But his effect is really good. He's a 4/5 1k counter, and on play you get a 7 Warlords of the Sea or Thriller-Bark Pirates type character with a cost of 4 or less other than Gecko Moria from your trash to your hand, which is really good. This grabs back Mihawk or Buggy for a 2k. This grabs back Law or Bo Hancock for a power play. This can grab back Doffy blocker if you need to stack your deck. This can't grab the vanilla, which is worth noting. But this can also grab back like a Law blocker if you just really need a blocker on the next turn. This card's incredible. This card and the Mihawk are also really nice reprints. These came out in Starter Deck 3 ages ago, and these are actually quite pricey now, especially this artwork, but even the regular artworks of these are pretty pricey. Mihawk is up next. He's a 4/5 2k counter, which is exceptional, and he also has Don ×1 when attacking, draw 2, trash 2. This card's great. When attacking is obviously very powerful, but being a 2k, playing out in this format seems a little iffy. The fact that you can trigger it off your leader effect and it's a really nice body is cool. Nothing bad to say about this card. This is great. 4 1-cost 1k power blocker laws. This guy doesn't have counter, unfortunately. All of the other so-called chump blockers in these starter decks have counter. This guy doesn't, which kind of sucks, but he's okay. Chump blockers, I think, will be decent in this format, so I think this has some value. Now we go on to the new cards. First new card is Crocodile. 4-cost, 5,000 power, 1,000 counter. On play, reveal the top card of your deck. If it has 7 Warlords of the Sea type, draw 2 and put 1 card from your hand on top of your deck. This is brilliant, especially for this format. This is always going to hit. This is a guaranteed hit. So you draw 2 and then put 1 back on top, which you can then potentially use with your leader effects. This is awesome. This has been in and out of constructed lists of Doflamingo. This is not a staple, but for sealed, this seems brilliant. Next up, we have the 4-cost 5,000 power Trafalgar Law. You only get 2 copies of this guy. He has 1,000 counter, and what he says is, on play, you may return one of your characters to your hand. If your leader has 7 Warlords of the Sea type, which we do, return a 4 or lower character to the owner's hand. This can actually bounce 2 of your own characters. In Constructed, if you had something like a Sengoku and a Buggy on the board, and your opponent had nothing, you can just play this and pick up both the Sengoku and the Buggy, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the power play with this is bouncing something like your Buggy stacker, or even your Teach, or your Bartholomew Kuma searcher, and then bouncing one of your opponent's 4 costs. Bouncing a 4 cost in this format is a pretty crazy tempo swing, especially if you play this on something like the 5 Don turn. Yeah, this is an incredible card. Only a 2 of, so you will struggle to find it, but you've got the Doflamingo stacker to get closer. You've got a little bit of draw power in the Kuma and the Crocodile. So yeah, if you see this in your opening hand, I would keep it. Because you can bounce, for example, even just a 4-cost vanilla. That's crazy value. Buggy is a 1-cost 2000 power character. He is a 2k counter and he stacks the top 3 of your deck. Notably, he only puts them back on the top. You cannot choose to bottom the 3 cards with Buggy, which is rare. Most stackers, in fact, I think potentially all stackers other than Buggy, let you put them on the bottom if you don't like the cards you see, which is a bit of a shame. But as a 2k, this is really powerful. We've got 2 copies of the 4-cost 6000 power Bo Hancock. No counter, but she is a blocker. And this says, on play, look at the top 3 of your deck, then place them in any order on the top or bottom. Then give up to one of your 7 Warlords of the Sea, leaders or characters 1 rested Don. This card is ridiculous. On 6 Don, for example, you can play out this, stack the top of your deck, give a Don to your leader, swing him for 7, and still use the leader effect, even though you would only have 2 active Don, because this gives 1 rested to contribute to the cost. This card's ridiculous. This does everything. This is a really good stat blocker. This stacks, this gives you a Don. Yeah. Only a 2 of. You will need 4 copies of this for your constructed Doflamingo deck, same as Law and probably Buggy. But yeah, this is incredible in sealed and constructed. Next up, we have 4 copies of Marshall D. Teach. This is a nice new card, 2 cost, 3000 power, 1000 counter. He has activate main once per turn, place a card from your hand on the top of your deck, and then you give 2 rested Don to one of your leaders or characters. This is really nice for turbo aggroing. This will kind of decimate your hand size a little bit, but it's still really powerful if you have a specific target in your hand you want to get out for free. I will say I think this is probably better in constructed than in sealed, because you're never whiffing anyway, and you don't have as many powerful targets like you do in constructed with the Jinbei that cheats out a character and the Weevil that draws a card. But this card's still good. You'll still want 4 copies of this for constructed. It's not in every Doflamingo deck, but it's in a lot of them. Last up, we have Overheat. I think this is a little bit of a whiff. It's a counter event that costs 2, gives 4000 power for the battle, and then you bounce a active 3-cost character to the owner's hand. This is okay. You can bounce a chump blocker to go for game next turn, but if you have 2 Don up, your opponent's going to know exactly what you're doing, so it's not going to be a surprise. And the fact that it costs 2 Don kind of hurts this deck, because this is a more of an aggro type deck than a control deck, especially this build. So having to leave up 2 Don and not attack with them kind of sucks. Overall, I would say this is one of the strongest options, if not the strongest option for the sealed battle, and this is definitely the strongest option for constructed. Next up, Purple Luffy. This guy is awesome. If you don't know what his leader effect does, you can activate main once per turn. You add the top card of your life to your hand, and then if the amount of Don on your field is 0 or 3 or more, you ramp a Don as active. So you can't use this on the first turn of the game, but for as far as sealed is concerned, you can use this on any subsequent turn to ramp a Don, which is really nice. This helps you get to your big cards earlier. Going over the list, we have 4 copies of Uso Hachi. He's a 2k. His effect is okay, actually, because there's so little removal. The on-attacking Don times 1, if you have 8 or more Don on the field resting of 4, is actually pretty good. You can rest a blocker here with him. And because this deck has only 2ks, playing out 2ks doesn't hurt you as much as other decks. We have 4 of the O Robbie. She's a 4/5, 1k counter. If you have 8 or more Don cards on the field on play, KO a 3 or less. This card's pretty good. You can KO a chump blocker for free. You can KO something like a Searcher. You can KO a 3/5 vanilla, which is really efficient. Yeah, this card's not good in constructed, but in sealed, this could be pretty decent. Next up, we got Jinbei. This guy's actually pretty strong. He's a 5/6 blocker with 1000 counter, and in your opponent's turn, if you have 10 Don on the board, which you will quite fast with this deck, this character gains 1000 powers. He's a 5/7 blocker when he's upright. This is really strong, actually. Being able to block a hit for free even from something like Red Newgate, if they don't commit a Don, is really good. This is also just a nice big body to cheat out with your Luffy Taro. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Zorojiro. He's a 3/4 1000 counter. When attacking, if you have 3 or less life, and do note that in Constructed, this doesn't come up a lot, because most of the decks that have always played this guy have always been either 4 life leaders that take the first hit, or Red Purple Luffy, which starts with 3 life. But you will need to bear that in mind with Purple Luffy. But if you have 3 or less life, you can ramp a Don as active when attacking. And you can use this multiple times because there's less removal. And you could even restand this with Chopper Emon. If you have 8 or more Don on the field, this sets a purple character with 6000 power or less, and the Straw Hat Crew type as active. I don't think you would ever use this combo, but you could. It's something to consider. Next up, after Chopper, we have Franosuke. He's a 5/4 2k counter, which is okay, but Don times 1, if you have 8 or more Don on the field, he gains Rush. This is nice. Rush is rare in Sealed. Franosuke is a 2k that situationally can become a Rusher, if you just need that one more hit, which is nice. Next up, we have Bone Kishi. He's a 4/6, and on play, if your board has 8 or more Don, give 2 characters minus 2000 power. This is really nice for board control, actually. Vanilla stat line, no counter, but a really nice effect to help you attack into your opponent's characters and clear the board. In Sealed, I expect board clear to be very important, the same as it is in the booster draft format that we have for pre-release. So yeah, I'm actually quite interested in this card. Next we have a 10/12 Vanilla Luffy. He has counter, which is nice for a boss monster. I don't think this card's great, but if you can get it out a few turns early, you know, it's not the worst. Once it's down, it's not getting removed, except maybe by Smoker. But yeah, this is pretty good as a boss monster. Next up, we have 2 of the new Usohachi. He's a 3/3 2k counter. On play, if you have 8 or more Don, rest a 5. This is much better than the other Usohachi in Constructed. It's probably also better than the other Usohachi in Sealed. And yeah, this is the last 2k that we have. So we have 10 total 2ks, which is very strong. And this being able to rest blockers, I believe this can rest any blocker in the Sealed format, which is really good. Even things like the 5-cost Katakuri blocker. But yeah, only 2 copies of this guy. You'll need 4 for Constructed. Pick them up. Next up, we've got 4 of the Onami blocker. She's a 4-cost 2000 power character, which notably for Constructed means she can't be KO'd by OPO5 Nico Robin. And she is a blocker. On play, if you have 8 or more Don in the field, trash 1, draw 2. This is like Queen, except it's Straw Hat, so you can search it. This is a great card. This is a quality card. I do wish we got a Queen reprint in this deck, but this is a suitable replacement. This refills your hand, which is going to be very important for Purple Luffy, whilst also filtering you closer to your important cards, which are the cards coming up. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Sangoro. He's a 5/6 with 1000 counter, and he has, when attacking, once per turn, if you have 8 or more Don, draw a card. Just draw a card, no conditions when attacking. This is exceptional. If you can cheat this out early, you can start getting so much value, purely because there's very little removal in the format. Big fan of Sangoro. You will want 4 of these for Constructed. Pick them up. Next up, we've got 2 copies of Zorojiro. This is a 4/6, so vanilla stat line, exceptional, no counter, but he has on play, look at the top 5, reveal a purple Straw Hat Crew type card, and put it in your hand. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. It's a searcher on a 4/6 vanilla body. Like, this is awesome. This is a net neutral in hand. You get a 4/6 body on the field, and it can be cheated out with Luffy Taro, who is a 7/8 on play. Don -1, play a purple Straw Hat Crew type character with a cost of 5 or less from your hand. Your main targets for this are going to be Zorojiro, Sangoro, and Jinbei. You can also play out Orobi or Onami, which are not too bad, and in a pinch you could play out Bone Kishi or Franosuke. This is the best card in the deck by far. You can ramp to this two turns early, even going first, And if you can get the high roll of playing this into Sangoro or into Zorojuro or even into Jinbei, this is exceptional for sealed. The high roll of this purple Luffy deck I think is going to be the strongest in the format, which I think is going to be pretty important for sealed because there's always some inconsistency in sealed. Last up we have when you're at sea you fight against pirates. This is not Straw Hat Crew, so you can't search it with either of your searchers, but what this does is looks at the top 3 and reveals a Straw Hat Crew, Kid Pirates or Heart Pirates type card and adds it to your hand. This is fine. The trigger is Activate Main, which is nice. You get it for free if it comes out of life. But yeah, this can search anything in your deck except itself. And yeah, this is a good staple. This isn't in every Luffy list. I've seen this most in red purple Luffy, in fact, in 09 format. But yeah, this is a nice card to have some copies of. Overall, I would say this deck is awesome. There are so many good cards in this deck and so few bad cards in this deck. The only card I would say is even close to bad is Chopper Emon, but being able to restand at the end of the game to get an extra swing is really good, and you can even use it in combination with the old Usohachi to rest 2 characters in one turn, which is brilliant. All in all, I would say, I won't spoil the overall rankings, but if you get this at your sealed battle, you could be quite happy, and I would strongly recommend picking up 2 of these for Constructed. Next up, we have Black Smoker. Now this deck's a bit weird because it's a KO focus deck, but there's not that much KO in it, which is interesting. So what Smoker does is Don X1, activate main, once per turn, give one of your opponent's characters -1 to the cost during this turn. Then if there's a character with a cost of 0 in play, this leader gains 1000 power for the turn. This is cool. 1 Don, he can become 7 if there's a 0 cost in play. This can include your own 0 costs, but I don't know how you would reduce your own character's costs. But yeah, if your opponent plays a 1-cost searcher, for example, like a Izo, this is just a 7k leader for the rest of the game, with 1 Don, only on your turn, of course. But yeah, this is very good. First up, we have 4 copies of Kobe. This is one of the strongest cards in the deck, amusingly. 3 cost, 4000 power, 1000 counter, on play, trash a card from your hand, KO a 3. This is the most prevalent KO in the format, I believe, and whilst it says KO a 3, you might be thinking, oh, that can't KO higher cost characters, like the Luffy Taro we just looked at, or the Sangoro. But Black's thing is reducing cost. So you have all these reducers that we're going to go over, such as the biggest one, Ice Age, 1 Don, give -5 to your character. But that immediately lets Kobe clear an 8 cost character, which is crazy value. Black is very dominant in Constructed at the moment. I think if this deck had a more KO power, this could be pretty insane in Sealed. But I think as it is, this deck would just be decent. Next up, we've got 4 Surus. This is a 1 cost 0 power unit with 2000 counter, and on play you give one of your opponent's characters -2 cost. This card's a really nice reprint because now I've just got extra copies for my decks, which is pretty cool. This card's not like expensive or anything, it doesn't have any crazy effect, but it's just solid. Next up, we've got 2 cost 2000 power Rosnante blockers. He's just a blocker with 1000 counter. Nothing special, not bad, not amazing. Next up, we've got 4 Jaguar D Soul vanillas, 4/6 vanilla. This is fine. We have 4 Helmeppos. He's a 3 cost 3000 power character. He has trigger play this card for some reason, which is nice, I guess. And he has, when attacking, give one of your opponent's characters -2 to their cost. Then, if there's a character with a cost of 0 in play, this character gains 2000 power, which is okay. Like I said before, when attackings are slightly better in this format. This card's still not great because it's a 3/3, although it is effectively a 3/5 if you can wangle it so that there's a 0 cost. And giving -2 when attacking is decent. Next up, we've got 4 3 cost 5000 power vanilla Yamakijis. I didn't know this card exists. I don't know who this character is, but hey, it's a vanilla, it's there. We've got 4 5 cost 5000 power Virgos. He's a 2k counter. For Don times 1, he can't be KO'd in battle, which actually might be slightly more relevant in this format. This might become pretty hard to remove, to be fair. That's pretty cool. With 4 brand news, this is a classic card, 2 cost, 3000 power. Look at the top 3, reveal a Navy type card other than brand new, add it to your hand, then trash the rest. This is probably one of the other strongest searches in the game. Filling up your trash is nice for a couple cards we're going to get to in a minute. And also, it's a good body, 2-3. It's not as good as 4-6, of course, but 2-3 is not bad. Attacking this won't feel terrible. Next up, we have 4 Smokers. This is the first new card. He's a 6-8, and he says, on play, you may trash 1 Black Navy card from your hand. Up to 2 of your opponent's 4 or less cost characters cannot attack during your opponent's next turn. And one thing to note, of course, is this works with cost reduction. So if you play Ice Age on one thing and use your leader effect on something else, you can freeze a 9 and a 5. Which is crazy. And this guy has a vanilla stat line. No counter, but 6-8 is crackers. This card, I think, is one of the strongest cards in Sealed specifically. This isn't seeing any play in Constructed, but I think in Sealed, this card is wild. Especially into a deck like Doflamingo, that's all about playing 4 costs. You don't even need the reduction. This card just freezes 2 characters, because why not? I think people are slightly overlooking this for Sealed. I think this is one to keep an eye on. Next up, we've got 2 of this Sengoku. He's a 1 cost 1000 power character with 1000 counter. He says, on play, trash 2 Black Navy cards from your hand. If your leader has the Navy type, which we do, draw 3. This is a nice filter. This is nothing too crazy in Sealed, but filtering is always good. And where all your cards are Navy, you can trash anything. And in Constructed, this is very strong in Smoker. There's not many other Navy leaders that are seeing a lot of play at the minute. But if you were playing like a rogue deck, something like the promo Blue-Black Sakazuki, this could be pretty cool. Next up, this is the star of the show, 5 cost Tashigi. You get 2 of these. She's 6000 power with 1000 counter, which is exceptional. On play, if your leader is Smoker, so this is hard lead locked, give one of your opponent's characters -4 cost for the turn. And then she has Activate Main once per turn. If it is the turn that this character was played, place one of your opponent's cost 0 characters into the trash. So the reason this is worded weirdly for any of the newer players is you can use this. Here, for example, so there's a 5 cost Tashigi on your opponent's side of the field. You can give -4 to the Tashigi, put 1 Don on your leader, use his effect, bring the Tashigi down to 0, get the extra 1000 power, and then trash the opposing Tashigi with the second effect. This is wonderful. This is the best removal in the format by far. Yes, you can't say enough good things about this card. This card is good and constructed. This card is basically single-handedly revived Smoker from being a very bad leader to actually quite strong. Trashing instead of KOing avoids a whole bunch of things. Just for Sealed, it avoids like the 4 cost Marco blocker that can't be KO'd or can negate the KO. It avoids the on KO of the 4 cost Jinbei. And in Standard Constructed, this negates all sorts of stuff. 5 cost Sabo's effect, 4 cost Borsellino's effect to avoid being KO'd. Yeah, any on KOs, this card's brilliant. The other SR is not so great, even though she does have some interesting assets. This is a 4/6 Hina card. Don times 1 in your opponent's turn. This card has +4 cost. This is really hard to remove. I guess this might come up in Smoker Mirrors, but whatever. Activate Main. Once per turn, you can place 1 card from your trash on the bottom of your deck. Give your leader or one of your characters Arrested Don. This is brilliant because there is no trash recursion or effects that require cards in trash in this Sealed deck. This is effectively just +1000 power per turn. And the fact that you can put the Don on your leader even lets you use your leader effect for free, basically. In Standard Constructed, this would be slightly worse because bot decking a card does have some ramifications. But in this it doesn't because there's no interaction with trash. So for a vanilla card, this is great. This is a great card. But you do only get 2 copies, so there's that. Last for the new cards, we have 4 copies of Garp. He's a 3/4 blocker, 1000 counter. He has activate main, place 1 card from your trash at the bottom of your deck. Give one of your opponent's characters -1 cost for the turn. This is okay. This is nothing too crazy. He's a blocker, which is nice. -1 cost for effectively free is fine. Yeah, it's kind of just fine. This isn't doing anything crazy purely because there's not that much KO in the deck, but I could see you experimenting with this, potentially. You could even, in Constructed, summon this off of Rebecca, which is interesting. Last up, we've got 4 Ice Age. This is a really nice reprint. This card is worth a little bit of money, even though it's only an uncommon. So getting 4 copies of this is pretty nice. Overall, I would say Smoker is okay. I think this could have a bit of sauce, especially this card, the 6-cost Smoker. But I think this is probably not one of your top choices if you get to choose what to play for the sealed event. Last up, we have Katakuri. I'm not a fan of this deck, I'll be honest. I think a lot of these cards are not great. What his leader effect is Don times 1 when attacking. You look at up to 1 life card from either the top of you or your opponent's life. Then you put it back at the top or bottom of that player's life pile. Then this leader gains 1000 power for the battle. This is fine. This is good. Getting an extra 1000 power for free is very good for an aggro playstyle. In Sealed, this will be especially good because it will demand 2 cards, and with the lack of 2Ks, this might even demand 3 cards in certain situations, which is really nice. The moving life around definitely has more ramifications for Constructed, because there are way less powerful triggers in this, thankfully. But it's still nice to know you can grab a bit of intel on what your opponent's got coming up, or you can set a trigger like Ikoku Sovereignty to the bottom of your life to cheat. First up, we've got 4/6 Charlotte Opera Vanillas. This is a vanilla, it's fine. Then we've got 2 cost 2k Charlotte Galette blockers. 1k counter, which is nice. But yeah, this is just a blocker. First real card is a Charlotte Smoothie. You have 4 of these. 4 cost 5000 power, 1000 counter. And when attacking, you can add a card from the top of your bottom of your life to your hand, and then this gains 2000 power for the battle. This could be nice when going for game. I don't see much use for this in any other situation, or at least the when attacking. You don't have to take the life, so you can just swing for 5, which is probably better in most situations. This also has a trigger. You can trash a card to play this card, which is nice. 4 Searcher Puddings. You look at the top 4 for a Big Mom Pirates type card or a Sanji. The reason it's 4 is because it gets 2 different targets. There's no Sanjis in this deck, but it can search anything in the deck because every card is Big Mom Pirates. We've got 4 Stroizons. This is a 1 cost 1000 power 2k counter, which is cool. On play, you can trash a card with trigger from your hand, KO a 1 or less. This might be relevant into Doflamingo to remove the law blocker. Outside of that, you're not playing this. This is, I think, an underrated card for this format. This is 4 cost Charlotte Daifuku. He has 5000 power, and what he says is Dom times 1 when attacking. You can add 1 card from the top of your bottom of your life area to your hand. Place up to 1 card from the top of your deck at the top of your life area. So if you look at something with Katakuri's effect and see a card that you want in your hand, or you specifically don't want in your life, you can take it with this and then add a new card from the top of your deck. This effectively at baseline reads draw a card, which is very powerful. Obviously you have to have Don times 1 and it's when attacking, but with so much less removal, I think this card's genuinely quite good for Sealed. This is no playing Constructed though. Don't play this in Constructed. We have 4 of the 3/5 vanilla Pecoms. Then we're on to the new cards. We've got 2 of this Katakuri. It's a 5 cost 6000 power blocker, 1000 counter, which is excellent. And it has activate main. Once per turn, you may turn the top card of your life face up, and then give your leader or one of your characters arrested Dom. Very efficient. If you can reuse this effect either by just taking the face up life or by using something like Charlotte Daifuku, this can get some crazy value. The problem comes if you want to leave the card at the top and then your opponent doesn't attack, or if your opponent just doesn't deal damage to you, then you might not be able to use this effect. But a 5/6 blocker is still really strong. This card's great, 2 of. Then we have a Charlotte Cracker, 4 cost 5,000 power, 1,000 counter. Once per turn, when this character will be KO'd by an effect, you may instead trash the top card of your life. This is bad. I don't think you really ever want to use this effect unless you're going for game on the next turn. Yeah, it does have trigger. You can trash a card from your hand to play this card, which is very nice. But yeah, this card's not crazy, but it could be okay. You could get a trigger. Next up, we've got Charlotte Brûlée. This is a 2,000 counter. You're never playing this on the board, but it has trigger. Look at the top card of you or your opponent's life and put it back on the top or bottom of the life pile, and then Brûlée goes to your hand. So this is just free knowledge if you get this as a trigger. You do obviously give away to your opponent that you have a Brûlée in your hand, but getting to know what their next life is or what your next life is can be really game changing. And this is Big Mom Pirate Searchable. This is probably the best card in the deck for Constructed. I would definitely pick up 4 of these, even if you're not picking up this deck. Next up, this card is okay in Sealed and absolutely rancid for Constructed. This is 3 cost, 2,000 power Pudding. On play, you may add the top card of your life to your hand, which is already bad, and then you restand one of your cost 3 or less Big Mom Pirates. So in this deck, the only attackers, if this is restanding, is Pecoms. It's just Pecoms. Like, this is very not good, but it's okay for Sealed. If you need to go for game, you need 1 extra attack, and you have a Pecoms on the board, you know, you could play this card. Thankfully, there's only 2 copies. It does have a trigger to rest a 3 cost, which is fine. This is rancid, though, for Constructed. 2 of these 6 cost 7,000 power Big Mums. No counter. On play, you may trash 1 card from your hand, and your opponent either chooses to trash 2 cards from their hand, or 1 card from the top of their life. This is a really good card. In Sealed, this gives your opponent a real dilemma. The games where you see this card are going to feel a hell of a lot stronger than the games where you don't see this card. So I would recommend looking for this card in the early game to try and play this out. In Constructed, I was hopeful that this would be good. It's not seeing a lot of play, but that could just be because yellow isn't seeing that much play at the minute. Maybe if Katakuri comes back into the meta later down the line, this could be a really strong card. Next up, we've got the events. We've got 4 Ikoku Sovereignty. This is a 2 cost event. It says counter plus 5,000 power. This also has a trigger that you trash 2 cards from your hand and heal a life. The trigger's really cringe, honestly, but as a 2 cost 5,000 power counter event, this is okay. This is decent. And then we've got 4 Thunderbolts. This is a 2 cost event. You may trash 1 card from the top over your life, KO a 5. Or if you get it off trigger, you can just KO a 5. You don't have to trash a card off the top of your life. It's great if you see it as a trigger. This is very average if you have to play it from hand. But yeah, that's Katakuri. I think Katakuri's leader effect is very strong, but I think a lot of the cards in this deck are pretty weak. Yeah, especially some of these cards like Pudding. The 2Ks are not great. You do have trigger bodies, which is a nice thing that this deck can do, but having 4 big counter events is not great, and Thunderbolt's not crazy either. I would try and avoid this deck for the Sealed at least, but it's not too bad. You can kind of clutch on your leader effect and some triggers maybe. Okay, that was a nice overview of all the deck builds that you're going to get out of the box. Now let's hop back to the PowerPoint, where I'm going to go over the rankings of these decks and my final thoughts. Okay, I'm not going to edge you. These are the rankings that I would say for Sealed and from Constructed. For Sealed, my hot take is that Purple Luffy is better than Blue Doflamingo. I think some of the cards that deck has are just really strong, and some of Doflamingo's cards are exceptionally weak. Third, I would put Whitebeard. I think this is a little underrated. I think being 6,000 power leader is just inherently crazy, and having that extra resource. I think some of the effects like the Atmos are overlooked a little at the moment. The 7 cost Edward Newgate is also exceptional if you find him. Next, I would say number 4 is Black Smoker. I think if you get the removal, this deck could be insane, but those games where you don't draw the removal, this deck will feel incredibly weak. I think this is a little too high rolly for me. 5th, we have Yellow Katakuri. Leader effect strong, a lot of the cards are not. But yeah, if you high roll and see triggers and these 6 cost Big Mum especially, you could do very well with this Katakuri deck. And dead last, Green Uta, this is horrible. We went over this. This deck is just rancid. For Constructed, however, I think Doflamingo is the clear winner. This deck has some crazy cards for Doflamingo. This single-handedly catapults Doflamingo from probably a mid deck to arguably the best deck in the game. If not number 1, it's probably number 2. Second up, we have Purple Luffy. This gives Purple Luffy, which is already a good deck, a second lease of life. Some of the new cards in this deck are really nice for Luffy. Third, I would say Red Whitebeard, and we'll go over why, but I think it's mostly because of the 7 cost Edward Newgate. Fourth, surprisingly, Green Uta, because of the Shanks. Fifth, I would say Black Smoker. This is a nice deck if you want to play Smoker, but it's not very splashable. And Katakuri, I think, is pretty much entirely skippable. But why? Why? Edward Newgate. These are the rankings, just if you need a reminder, the sealed and constructed rankings. So why is this good in sealed? 6k leader, extra resources strong, but without the 9 cost Newgate that you would play in constructed, you always just stem the bleed effect are a bit sus. Lots of blockers will give you some game at 0 life though, especially the Marco blocker. 7 cost Newgate is nuts, but you only get 2 copies. This is the best removal in the game probably. This or Toshigi. But having only 2 copies mean that it's going to be quite inconsistent to find. There's no bad cards in this deck. All this deck's cards are good at the baseline. In constructed, 7 cost Newgate is exceptional in Marco. The Thatch 2k is a nice Whitebeard searchable 2k. The Newgate, I didn't put it on this slide, I really should have. It's also exceptional in Shanks, which is looking to be a very strong deck in set 9. 5 cost Ace is a nice sticky body in Whitebeard decks for black matchups. Probably mostly Marco, but if you are a Red Ace fan or even an Edward Newgate fan, you're probably playing this 5 cost Ace. Moving on, we have Uta. This stinks, in sealed, lol, Lamau even. 28 events, next to no attacking characters, smiley face emoji. In constructed though, I think this is 4th. I think 4 cost Uta is very strong in an Uta deck. Getting that cycle and extra Don on those turns where you need to play on curve, I think is a little overlooked. 2 cost Luffy is another nice film searchable 2k, reducing the whiffs on your leader effect. 9 cost Shanks looks to be a staple in Bonnie. This removing big cards like 10 cost Shanks and any other rush cards like 8 cost Dragon. This also removes any tapped cards. In a mirror, you could remove a kid if there's no Roslante protecting it. Artolomeo doesn't see much play anymore, but it's nice you got a reprint. This card used to be like $70, which is ridiculous. It was never even that good in Green Uta, but if it ever does come back into the meta for whatever reason, it's nice that you got a reprint. And I also understand the events are exclusive to the other Sealed Battle events, the 4 bad ones, the I'm Invincible, Backlight, and New Genesis were in the other Uta starter deck. They will kind of suck though. Overall, what I would say is if you want to play Uta, just buy the other Uta starter deck, honestly. It's a better starting point. The Shanks might not even be a staple in Uta. People might still opt for the 8 cost kid. You can pick up a couple of these singles, maybe pick up... You will need the 4 cost Uta probably for an Uta deck. But yeah, I wouldn't bother with this unless you're looking to play Bonnie. If you're looking to play Bonnie, I think it's important to buy a couple of these just for the Shanks. Next up, Doflamingo. I think this is second in sealed and the best for constructed. Why is it good in sealed? Leader effect only has 4 misses, so you can just YOLO it. Like, you're going to hit every time, almost without a doubt. The 2 ofs are Law and Boa are extremely powerful, but you don't have a reliable way to find them. But in those games where you do find them, you're going to feel very strong indeed. Kuma Searcher is weird, I don't like it. 3 cost 3k, search the top 2 and then stack 1. It's just kind of weird, I don't like it. I think Doffy blocker is very strong in this format, just because it's harder to remove him, and getting the stack effect as well is really good. And he is a viable attacking body, only 1 Don, you can swing for 5. The Mihawk when attacking is good, but with so few 2Ks you probably shouldn't play it out, so that's something to note. And no boss monsters might make this deck struggle in the endgame. I can see this struggling against Smoker if they find their removal, or against Edward Newgate if they find their 7 cost Newgate. But I think overall this deck is very strong, very aggro, and it's going to demand a lot of your opponent. For constructed though, this is easily the strongest. This looks to be top 3 in 09, I would imagine in 08.5 as well, but this is likely the number 1 deck. Almost certainly the number 1 deck. 4-cost Law, 4-cost Boa, and 1-cost Buggy are staples you'll need. Teach and Crocodile are also strong, but they're more optional. The reprints of the starter deck 3 cards, Gecko Moria and Mihawk, are really nice. These cards are worth a few bucks now, so getting a reprint of these is really cool. This will reduce the price of those almost to nothing, which is awesome. OP1 Doffy is also worth a couple bucks, I think, so that's a nice reprint to see. Jinbei promo doesn't see any play anymore, but the reprint's still nice, I guess. If you ever wanted to play the Jinbei, you now have a way that's not... It was a tournament promo before, I believe, which sucks. Moving on, we have the purple Luffy. I think Doflamingo and Luffy are easily the best 2 decks in the set, just across all formats. For sealed, I think Ramp is generically good. You have Mordon Swing Big and tax cards from your opponent. You have crazy draw with cards like Sangoro, Onami, and Zorojiro if you find them. Draw in this format is going to be really good. It's the same reason why Doflamingo is good, because he plays characters out from the top of his deck rather than from hand. But yeah, this having actual draw on good characters is wild. Luffy Taro into Sangoro or Jinbei is a crazy play. You can do 2 turns early if you high roll. If you see Luffy Taro, you should probably win the game if you see Luffy Taro in your opening hand. You have a high 2k count, I believe it was 10 2ks, which will help your survivability, which is obviously important because you're damaging yourself. 10-12 vanilla is not great, but if you can get him out early, it could be kind of cool. I would not recommend playing against Smoker though, because they don't have much else to use their Ice Ages on. The blockers in this deck are very powerful. The Jinbei can become a 7k blocker, which is exceptional, and the Onami has some cycle built in, which is really cool. Both of them can obviously be cheated off of the Luffy Taro as well. The Rush for Nosuke and the Restand Chopper are nice options at the end of the game that your opponent might not see coming. So I think you could surprise people with that a little bit. For constructed, Purple Luffy as a leader is likely top tier. If not in 8.5, he is certainly top tier in 09. Looks to be top 3, at the very least top 5. I think a lot of people are saying this is potentially the number 2 deck behind Doflamingo at the moment. You've got a ton of good cards in this. Luffy Taro, Sangoro, Onami, Zorojiro, and Usohachi. All the new cards are all staples in Purple Luffy, and possibly some of the other part Purple Luffy leaders too. None of the reprints too crazy. I think it's a shame there's no Queen. I was really hoping to see Queen in this deck. We are getting Queen in PRB 01, so you could draw Queen in your PRB 01 pack, I guess, but I appreciate he's not Straw Hat, so they didn't want to put him in here, but it's still a shame. Next up, we've got Smoker. In sealed, removal seems really strong, but unfortunately they didn't give this guy a lot of removal. I think if they gave him 1 or 2 more removal pieces, this could have been up a little higher. 6-cost Smoker does seem insane though, especially with the reduction. And as I mentioned before, you could do Ice Age, Leader Effect, and 6-cost Smoker on 8 to stop a Luffy Taro Sangoro combo from attacking. This Smoker in general just seems wild. I think this is going to be a really underrated card in sealed. The Hino SR gives nice free value. It's effectively a free Don every time she survives in sealed. In constructed, it's not really seeing any play, but I think it could be worth experimentation in the ST15 Luffy, because she becomes an 8-cost really early. Ice Age is not super needed with how low costs are in this format, with how few boss monsters there are, but if we move over to constructed, the Ice Age reprint is pretty nice because it's worth about $1, maybe 2, and it's a black staple. In constructed in general, I think this deck is strong because it single-handedly turns Smoker from a bad leader to a strong leader, which is pretty crazy. The Shigi's wild. This is one of the best black cards in the game. It's no Gecko Moria, but it's still very strong. Sengoku's a really nice addition, but unfortunately, because there's no other good Navy leaders, neither of these are splashable. Tashigi will never be splashable because she's hard locked to black Smoker decks, but Sengoku is only locked to Navy, So if we get another Navy deck, or if Sakazuki ever gets unbanned, God forbid, this Sengoku will be a really high value card. Not necessarily monetary value, but high value in terms of how much you get out of him. The Ice Age reprint is nice, the 1-cost Suru reprint is nice. This card doesn't have a lot of value, but having more copies is cool. I would like to see a 3-cost Hina reprint. Hina is a 3-cost 5k that on play gives -4 cost. This was only in starter deck, what was it, 8? No, 6, starter deck 6, sorry. The black Sakazuki starter deck. There is a full art of this being printed in the Premium Bandai Collection 2, or whatever it's called. But I'd like to see a half art reprint in here. I think that would be pretty cool, maybe over the 3-cost Helmeppo. But hey, we move. Last up, Katakuri. I think this is generally the worst leader to pick up, because it's not, I don't think it's great in sealed. I think it stinks in constructed. For sealed, the leader effect is good, and you can cheat wins with triggers, but lots of your cards damage yourself, which kind of sucks. Thunderbolt feels really bad, unless it's a trigger. And I think Daifuku is another overlooked card for this format. Constructed, Katakuri doesn't look to be a great deck at the moment, or in set 9. Both the SRs are not great. The new Pudding and Cracker seem rancid for Constructed. Brûlé 2k is the best card in the deck, but it will be cheap because it's common and you get 4 copies, so I'd just pick up singles, personally. I'm just going to take a drink. So, to end out, conclusions. This is not financial advice. However, if you have the funds, I would buy 2 of each of these starter decks. Not only do you get the deck, you also get a booster pack of PRB01 in them. I have no idea if stores are going to let you use the contents of that in your starter deck, but that could be pretty interesting if they do. But either way, I would buy 2 of each. Then you've got all the cards. These starter deck cards in the past have sometimes shot up to just ridiculous values. Queen, I believe, was like $40 at one point. The Doflamingo cards, the Mihawk and the Moria, were like $10 each at one point. Even cards like Hina and Ein were ridiculous prices in the past. So I would recommend picking up 2 if you can of each. However, if you're on a budget and for a more interesting conversation, I would 100% get 2 copies of Doflamingo and Luffy. These decks look to be insanely strong in the formats coming up, and also the new cards in these, especially the 2 ofs, are staples at 4. 1 copy of Uta will probably be cheaper than buying 2 Shanks, especially given that you get a PRB01 pack. Shanks is likely a 2 or 3 of, more than a 4 of in Bonnie. If you're planning to play Green Uta, I'd probably pick up 2, but if you're not, I'd potentially just get 1. The new 8 deck, I would buy 2 of. Oh look, I remembered Shanks in this slide. The 7-cost Newgate looks like a staple in Shanks at 4, and also in Marco, though Marco might not be at 4, he might be at 3. The 5-cost Ace is also nice in a Whitebeard deck. Yeah, I think the Newgate alone pushes this deck to be worth it to buy 2. You also get the Thatch 2k, which if you're playing Whitebeard Searchers in any deck in the future, you'll want 4 of the Thatch. Smoker, if you want to build Smoker, pick up 2. If you don't want to build Smoker, I would skip this deck. All the good cards in this deck are leader locked. You can grab Sengoku singles, he's just a common. There's only 2, but you can probably grab those for a couple bucks. In case there's a Navy leader in the future, or in case Sakazuki ever gets unbanned. What a world that would be. And Katakuri, I think, is super skippable if you don't have the funds. I would grab Brûlé singles, but again, it's a common. These will likely just be a few cents each. So yeah, that's the overview of each of these decks and what I would recommend grabbing. Let me know where you think I'm wrong. Let me know if you think you'll be playing for your sealed battle decks, sealed battle tournament. And if there's anything that you think I've missed, please let me know. I'm always looking to learn more. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please hit subscribe. My next video will be a Shanks deck guide for 09, and I hope you enjoy your sealed battle tournament when those happen in a couple weeks, and I hope you have a lovely day.